myself for some time on how exactly to approach Adam and Eve. Of all the stories in the Bible, it's the one that has felt the most alien to me. It's the one that, even in Sunday school as a kid, I always felt was most distant, like there was something about it that I couldn't penetrate. Sometimes I would think to myself, well, maybe I'll understand when I'm older. Maybe there's something about it that I'm not getting yet. Surely it can't be that simple. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe I need to learn about something else to learn about it. And I have a feeling that there is going to be a lot of retroactive continuity in the Bible. It's the kind of story that will add things later on that explain previous events that were just not elaborated on. And there's a sense in which that can be helpful and interesting as a storytelling method, or as a way to reveal something about a story that's already been told in a way that means you don't have to relay all the information at once. You can withhold something and then reveal it later to give more context. And hopefully, it will also apply to the current situation as to why you're explaining that event, why you're giving new information, or information that one would think you should already know that by this point in the story, if you are to make a cosmology, or a religion, or a series of myths or stories in a universe you set up as a creative writer or a songwriter or whatever. It might be a good idea to start with an idea, and if you have details that just don't fit in yet, use them later, and if you have to explain them at a later date to apply back, fine. As a storytelling idea, I've always been fascinated with that. Some of my favorite stories do that, whether it's to change the status quo of something, or to establish some new aspect of the story that was unseen during the first thing. Kingdom Hearts does retcons extremely well, and does so in adding context to old events that the heroes didn't know about beforehand, and couldn't have known about. And so these new events give way to new revelations, and those new revelations reveal more about those past events while informing the events of the present. It's brilliant stuff. I'd be lying if I said I was not influenced by it as a storyteller when creating my worlds and thinking about what I want to do as an artist. God created Adam. Yes. God let Adam name everything, which is kind of a cool detail. I'm not sure what to do with that, because there's no indication in the text that Adam knew the names of the animals, and God was just waiting for Adam to come up with them, you know, by like transmission. Adam points to something and names it on a very surface level kind of basis. It gets that idea right. The way in which Adam and Eve are created is kind of cool, and there seems to be some significance to Eve being made out of Adam's rib. It's not the kind of symbolism that's obvious, and I don't know if it'll ever be explained. Maybe it will. Maybe there's some deeper reason for it, but that's an aspect of the story that's kind of alien to me. Why the rib? What is it about that makes Eve come about? And on the subject of names, you know, it isn't explained how Adam names all the creatures, but it gives him a kind of mythic quality, because by implication, all the creatures and things you see are influenced by what Adam called them. Now, yeah, okay, in Genesis 1, they name things like what light is, and the firmament, and, you know, the trees and the seeds, but there aren't really specifics as to what those things are. It's all very general in Genesis 1. And it's cool that Adam gets to look at a creature or a thing and point out it specifically, which makes it all the more sad and tragic and kind of beautifully poetic that Adam names Eve. And at the moment of their banishment, he calls her that because she's the mother of man. That she is the one who will bear everyone that comes next. That gets a +1 for the poetics, I think. It's a really beautiful illustration in a short period of time of consistency and of a beautiful thing turning sour. And as much as I feel for Adam and Eve, I don't know if I can say that the original state of their affairs was beautiful, because they weren't really human, were they? More than anything, they're more like robots. They're innocent. They're more like a dog than a person. The only things we know about them are that they aren't ashamed of going around naked. And then after they eat from the fruit, which is not an apple, it's just a fruit, they then make primitive clothing to cover themselves up. Which, if you know about what's good and evil, and you then cover your supposedly perfect body created by God, I would say it's a sex sucks thing, because it's demeaning the human body. And I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I probably shouldn't look too far into it, because, you know, you could ask the questions of, well, you know, if they're ashamed after they know about good and evil, are they saying that their bodies are evil, and therefore the $1 million is evil, and that God is evil because they're ashamed of their bodies? But it's weird. It's that they have knowledge of their bodies. They're aware of it and then become ashamed of it. The reason I could never identify this story is because it has an infinite sadness to it. Two innocent creatures who were meant to be together do one bad thing. And that one bad thing is obeying a serpent who says you will be like gods if you eat from this fruit. You will know good and evil, which is what God knows. You will know morality. God thinks your rightful place is to not know morality. You don't question what he says or what he does. Why would he make this tree? I doubt I'll find the answer in this book. The answer is so insidious and gross and cruel that I don't even want to speak on it. I mean, this is the beginning. Adam is subjected to toil the rest of his days, where God explicitly says you will suffer when tilling the land that you came from, and you will return to. And he also says that when you eat the fruits of your labor, you'll taste the sweat and the dirt, and you won't get enjoyment out of it. You'll just barely keep living. Oh, and Eve, the be fruitful and multiply, well, you're going to suffer because of that. And God actually says that Eve will bear children in sorrow. Now, don't be mistaken. This doesn't just mean childbirth will now be painful. This means that the very act and meaning of bearing a child is one of pain. And I think part of it has to do with this whole fallen world idea. You are not you are not in Eden. You are out of it. You are out of paradise. And so every child is now further removed from that in some way. The very act that things like eating or seeing the fruits of your labor are not enjoyable. Bearing children will be done in sorrow, as pain, not out of love. And the fact that nothing the man will ever do will be enough. He will work and work and work and work and work and then die. And the wife, she will serve his man, her man, and then she will bear children and suffer, and probably bear more children, and then suffer and struggle and die. That is such a crime against my sensibilities, against what I think all those things are, that the very idea that bringing someone into the world is just pain multiplied is disgusting to me. It is an infinite sadness. And I don't know if Jesus will compare, because the innocent were punished for being curious, for wanting to know and not be innocent. It's as if the dog wanted to learn what the word meant, and didn't just respond to the sound of sit, but wanted to know, sit? Well, what does that mean? And was punished for it, and whose children were punished for it. And that's the worst part. Anyone born of Adam and Eve will bear the sins of what they didn't do, of what they weren't a part of and had no choice in. It's not even Adam and Eve's fault. It's not even the serpent's fault. It was not the devil. It said that the serpent will then crawl on its belly for punishment and eat dirt for the rest of its days. So the serpent was probably not a snake, but some other creature. And if it's said that it's the devil later on in the Bible, okay, we'll get there when we get there. But this doesn't change the fact that God decides to punish Adam and Eve rather than supposedly the greatest evil of all. God decides to punish that which he creates in his own image. What's more vile than that? Than damning your children before they are even human, and the moment they become human. If there is one thing that's cool about this, is that after Adam and Eve eat the fruit, they hear the voice of God walking through the forest. Once again, not a physical description, but the voice of God walking through the forest, through the garden. And people have debated as to what it meant when God said, "Where art thou, Adam?" Is that sarcastic? Is that, "Where art thou"? Is it genuine? What is that? Does God have more of a limited presence in the garden? Perhaps God limited itself when in the garden to present itself to Adam and Eve. It's the voice of God, the word of God, with no physical form. I don't know. It's kind of cool. The only other thing that's worth mentioning in this section is that after they are cast out, God notes that he's preventing Adam and Eve from eating from the tree of life, which is the one that grants immortality. And he blocks Eden off with a cherubim, which isn't described, so I'm not going to describe it here. A cherubim to guard it, with a flaming sword that swings every which way to block the path of anyone who might dare enter. It's cool imagery. It's also frightening and evil, but what are you going to do? And you know what? Hey, if this is the infinite sadness, it only goes uphill from there, right? We got the first murder. That's cool, Ooh, gonna kill my brother. Ooh, gonna kill my father. Ooh, gonna screw my mother. Then go blind and then walk as a seer, 'cause I'm Oedipus. But this ain't Greece. It's the Bible. And it sucks.